what is the difference between Siddhas, Rishis, Munis, Jivanmuktas, Jnanis, and Avaduts?
Oh, it's a very, very long topic, I think. So, Rishis. So, there are original Rishis. You know, every Kalpa, there are certain Rishis that are assigned, 7 Rishis. So, people think these are some kind of living beings in bodies. I'm not saying to take this piece of knowledge as a truth, but to give it a chance. It's a perspective. So again, we're talking about ancient knowledge, about Rishis. We know there were Rishis. People think they're stars. They are 7 beings. So I'm giving what I know. These are 7 streams of consciousness, which are chosen to stream onto this planet for incarnation or in a particular cycle, right? So in a particular kalpa, there'll be cycles. Now these 7 streams of consciousness will be incarnated and will have this experience on this planet Earth. Or in a particular system, it doesn't necessarily need to be Earth, it could be other planets in the same system. So they incarnate from different streams of cosmic consciousness. And so these Rishis represent. Now, the word Rishi started being associated with a wise man or someone who has unlimited knowledge or much higher knowledge than the majority. And if we look at the streams of consciousness, so what are these streams? So these different streams will become a collective consciousness. So the 7 streams will become, let's say, a collective, maybe more than 7, but let's say major. So these streams of consciousness will start incarnating. They will carry the seed of their cosmic consciousness, and they will bring that experience and that knowledge of their cosmic existence before incarnating here. They will incarnate at the top cycle. So the beginning of cycle is always higher when there's no dispersion. So these main streams will make it as a collective whole soul, the original soul, so-called, for this cycle, which will eventually disperse through the down cycle and they will unify again back through the upper cycle. So these are Rishis. Then these Rishis, through dispersion, may incarnate at some sort of form. In the upper cycle, it's a subtle form, which will be comprehended and visible, because that frequency will be shared at that time, mutually. Understand? So all these Rishis, they'll be in subtle bodies, but that they will share the same frequency, so these bodies will appear as visible in that frequency through the time and dispersion, through the cycle of degradation, down cycle. The frequency will lower through the corruption and through the accumulation of this dispersed experience, being burdened by experience and knowledge of the cycle. So they'll incarnate again, maybe, but in a different frequency bodies. But they'll carry that seed of the original knowledge. So these are Rishis, or Siddha consciousness. Then there is Siddha consciousness, is very, very highly evolved collective cluster of consciousness, which does not necessarily incarnate always, but it can have its representatives from time to time on this planet. Now, again, what do we know of Siddhas at this point? Like herbalists, people who collect plants and do Siddha medicine, who don't accept common religions. This is just a degraded form of understanding what Siddha consciousness is. Or some beings who can manipulate elements and creation, different forces within the creation. So Siddha consciousness is more like behind the scenes, which participates in the creation. So it's a cosmic consciousness which participates in the creation and making sure that each cycle, planets rotate in a certain way, that Earth is or other planets in certain axes and proximities, because it changes through cycle to cycle. So all this planetary system is like a mechanism for experience, different experience. And karmic manifestation. Karmic means through a form. Karma means the container of frequencies, the container of different aspects of existence, knowledge, action. Right? So through this karmic experiences, there will be different forms, different cycles, not cycles, but through different stages in cycles. So the forms will change. But because in every cycle, everyone incarnates into these forms, they always seem to be tangible for those who share the same frequency. They always seem real because frequency is shared. But then if you look the form in Kali Yuga, if you look at the form in Kali Yuga and you look at the form in Dwapara or Treta, they will be invisible for each other. Meaning the physical will be visible to those higher forms, but the higher forms will not be visible for our current form. So Siddha consciousness is the one that knows the secrets of creation. This is the realm of immortal beings who have had maybe different kind of experiences through different conscious clusters, through different cycles, and so on. And so they accumulated their knowledge. And they refined that knowledge. And they exist as a very high frequency, which is usually beyond the known forms. But sometimes it may incarnate as well. Or it may not precisely incarnate, but it may be connected to a physical form for a certain purpose. In our collective consciousness, those that resonate the highest purity will be absorbed into Siddha consciousness. Through this process of selection, or I don't know how to say it, polarization. Because these cycles are like, they define consciousness and they polarize it at some point and then they refine it. And the other ones that you mentioned, like Avaduts and who else was there?
Yanis,
Yogis,
Munis.
Again, these Munis, okay, Munis is easy because all of these terms came during the Kali Yuga. They were merged when spirituality went far from the natural spirituality. Natural spirituality doesn't have any form, is not defined, it's just some natural being, and the beings exist through this natural awareness of their high existence, as well as their current incarnation. That's natural spirituality. Spirituality that is wrapped up in a form or action is unnatural spirituality, and thus represents the corrupt age, or we represent it. That's where we make it, create it. So this dispersion happens also and touches the spiritual field as well. In the spiritual field, you see different branches and different schools and so on. So this reflects our dispersion within our collective consciousness. So we start having preferences, likes, dislikes, and so antagonistic tendencies. So spirituality becomes multifaceted, antagonistic sometimes or at times, and may seem like representing contradictory ideas, or some kind of forms of corruption within certain groups of within the collective consciousness, certain groups of the collective. So there are different types of spirituality then. And so overall, we can say that in this day and age, it's a demonic spirituality. Demonic because it reflects on our corruption, falsehood, and limitation. And through some kind of ritualistic performance, we're trying to get rid of this corruption, or on the contrary, get deeper into this corruption. See? So the falsehood lies in that we need to perform something to know spirituality. But the truth is that spirituality is a natural being. You can only return to it. Whether you do anything or don't. If you're not awakened to it, you can't know. So that's the simplicity of it. So everything in this day and age is complicated. So is the spirituality. That's why for the past 6,000 years, we created different kind of ritual, spiritual maps, concepts, ways to get there, to touch that. All that's always there. But if that frequency is not within ourselves, we're going to discover it. So we have to awaken to that high frequency to reconnect with it consciously. That's the key. Nothing else to do otherwise. And to maintain, cultivate, and widen. So at first it's like a little spring. You connect it, there is a little thread there. Slowly, slowly you expand it. So it becomes your being. Because that expansion resolves and dissolves all the corruption. It dissolves it, neutralizes it, and so you realize that you have never been limited to self-imposed, self-created. Now, so all these forms of spirituality created also tags and names and differentiations, differences between different groups of people. These are Sufis, these are Yogis, these are Avadhuts. These people are wearing loincloths, they're Avadhuts. They don't care about anything, so they're Avadhuts. You can't bring them to any category. You need to tag them anyway, so let's tag them Avadhuts. They neither belong to this nor belong to that, so they're Avadhuts. Avadhuts means, in other terms, nihilists, people who denied everything and just, they don't care about anything. Okay, I'm an Avadhut. But a true Avadhut, a true being who has dissolved all the corruption, will not want to be tagged anything. They live without tags. People may tag them. It's people who create tags, boxes, boundaries. These beings just, many Avadhuts actually are still corrupt because they're in denial of some aspect of life. So they are not Avadhuts. And who cares anyways, right? Because Avadhuts don't care. So yogis, supposed to be connected with this unified field. They're supposed to be awakened to that unified existence. And to refine through this so that they can live through it naturally. That's the point of yoga. And now everyone calls themselves yoga, or not yoga, yogis, because they stand on their head or twist their body. It has nothing to do with yoga. If you can twist your body and remain in that unified field, perfect. But if you are not twisting the body and cannot, and when you're not twisting your body, you're not perceiving that unified being of self, of being, or when you're in action, when you are concentrating on something, when you are speaking to someone, you forgot about your unified being, then you're not a yogi. A yogi is the one who emanates that unified presence, unified being. That's a yogi. It's a true yogi. Such beings are very few. Hundreds of thousands, probably millions of people practice something they call yoga. There's not yoga. And my words will challenge a lot of people. But you know what? This is the way to learn. This is the way to reflect the corruption. Because truth hurts. They may spend decades twisting their bodies, retaining their breaths, performing this and that, reading hundreds of scriptures. They have no idea what yoga is. They haven't tasted. They haven't awakened to the unified field. They may go to hundreds of Shaktipat gurus who stimulate their subtle body. So what? Who awaken their demons, their corruption. It doesn't do anything. There's no high frequency there. And so there's no possibility to come to that higher knowledge of yoga, true yoga. Now, Muni is Mauni. Again, people are stupid, idiotic, foolish by thinking that they can just retain some, like they can prevent themselves from speaking or keeping silence. It's a forceful silence. True silence has nothing to do with your speech. It's a silence of the mind. And silence of the mind is the same as Chitvritti Nirodha, which means consciousness is immovable. Why would it move? It's a unified field. It's there. It's in yoga. Why would it move? It doesn't need to connect to anything that is outside of it. It moves only when it needs to connect with something outside of it, with a projected reality. So true silence, true Muni is the ones whose consciousness is silent and silence. It means there is no movement. That's what Patanjali said. Immovable consciousness. Consciousness, in other words, Amanaska Yoga. Consciousness that is absorbed. Amanaska means no mind. The same as Laya, absorption. So consciousness is not in a dispersed or projected way. So what is it then? It's a unified way. It's yoga. In a way, when you say Amanaska, it's already yoga. When you say Vasi, it's already yoga. So it's all just words, the meaning of which the majority does not understand. All these gurus who propagate bookish knowledge or someone else's distorted pieces of knowledge have no idea because they have no experience or limited experience, which they cannot connect into a whole. And I'm nobody to teach them either. I'm just sharing the perspective, as I said. So Mauni, naturally, because the mind is not moving, it's kind of hard to just be there in that, operate through the physical. So in order to operate, all those beings also created certain sciences where they can maintain the physical body. Why? Because when they're in this unified field, the frequency is very high. This frequency is so high that it's difficult to maintain it in the physical body. It starts dissolving the physical body, right? Because it's a very high frequency. because they operate more through the subtle unified field. They dissolve their gross emotional distortions. So their body got purified, rejuvenated, glowing. Now, after this, if the frequency is even higher, it's difficult to maintain it. So they created also different, just basic practices to strengthen the stamina of the body through KayaKalpa, through different kind of herbs, through different kind of alchemical preparations, through different kind of alchemical meaning like the use of different metals and poisons. But they're not poisons, they're refined preparations so that the physical, the physical flesh can be strengthened and can be conducive or can conduct that higher frequency, higher form of radiation frequency of light, conscious light, and still retain the physical form. So only for that, some also strengthen their body through some specific postures or movements, but these movements have no much effect on a certain level. So, and that's why they naturally could not ingest any more foods that the majority who is having normal frequency of the age in that body could consume. So they couldn't ingest such foods. So their foods, their diet, or no food maybe in most cases, was there. So they couldn't consume any more same type of elements. And we believe that if we go backwards, we start practicing twisting of the body, different kind of physical exercises, we change our diet, that our consciousness will change. No, maybe a little bit, but it will still take a very long time. That food and that exercise or whatever the thing they did was a reflection of their consciousness that was necessary for them to maintain the physical body, still visible. So that's why all these ideas, people don't understand alchemy either. They think it's some kind of mumbo jumbo magic, and that through this they can acquire powers. This is foolish people, distorted towards power, narcissistic, spiritual narcissists. They don't understand. It was because all the sciences were about transcendence from one frequency to the other, from one type of the body to the other, from the physical to the subtle to the light body, and further. It was never about gaining anything here in this limited physical reality. This particular dimension is very limited. You can't do much here. On a subtle level, you can do much more, and further you go. But you don't want to do it. It's not about doing. It's about being, But I'm just speaking the language of the majority. They think they can do much. They think they can become magicians and kings by sending negative energy to someone, by doing black magic, by performing rituals, by threatening other people, by sending them jealous waves, by sending them negative energy. Clowns, try, But that which you send will come back and destroy you. So that's the lesson here. True spirituality, again, is very simple. It's all about the same. Through dispersion, we created Munis, Yogis, and all. It's all about the same. It's all about understanding the subtle existence. Egyptians told us to, Romans, some of them, ancient Greek, Persians, Indians, everyone spoke about it. they emphasized life after death, what that meant. Why did they do so much about it? They made a big deal, hustle, because they knew that that has much longer, that is an immortal essence. That is true existence. This life in physical body is a temporary experience in this particular frequency and dimension that I'm speaking about, which is now, and has been there for like past 6,500 years. And so now is the end of it, just at the very end. So yeah, everything changes, but there's a conflict. During the moment of change, there's a lot of confusion, and it's very difficult to understand what is happening because everything changes, frequencies change. The lower frequencies go with the lower, higher frequencies there at the same time. And so it's like a social madness, collective madness. So it's very difficult for the majority to find spirituality, what they're looking for. So those who are looking for it, they're looking for higher frequency. If they're looking for another spiritual illusion, they'll find it through certain beings who represent that illusion. If they're looking for the truth, maybe they'll find the truth. If they're looking for some kind of religious scenarios of truth, then they'll find that, they'll connect to it. So it's all just like a process of refinement, through a sieve. And for those for who this is the time, they'll awaken to this unified being. And they will see through the veil, so they won't hold on to the ego when they awaken. So these beings will continue into the new age, even through trials, turmoils, and challenges. Because after all, during the moments of change, it doesn't really matter who you are or who tagged you what, because it's only your frequency that defines where you're going to be and what your further purpose will be or how it will unfold. That's all.